was really impressed with the speaker from Podemos. But what we really need to know is that austerity isn't just hurting people in Spain, in Portugal, in Greece. It's hurting people in the UK. And we need to be very clear about it, that it's brutal, that austerity is killing poor and disabled people. Last year, I spoke about the situation facing disabled people in this country, how they've been singled out by this coalition government, by the Tories and the Lib Dems, for the harshest of treatments. Disabled people are affected 8 times more than the rest of the population by austerity and cuts. If you're severely disabled, you're affected 19 times, 19 more than the rest of the population. So you can see how brutal this is. And I'm not just talking about people who are receiving cuts and are stuck in their own homes because they can't get out of bed, or if they can get out of bed, they can't get out of their house because they haven't got the support that they need to do that. Because that's the situation in Norfolk, where Norfolk County Council, under the Tory administration and now under this Labour-led coalition, where they've cut services to the point where people are prisoners in their own homes. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about austerity that kills disabled people. David Clapson, an ex-soldier with mental health issues in Oxfordshire, was found dead in his flat. He'd been through the work capability assessment. They said he was fit for work. He got sanctioned by the benefits agency, by the DWP. When he died, the coroner said he had no food in his stomach and his body weight was 5 stone 8 pounds. This wasn't compatible with life. That's in Oxfordshire, where David Cameron's constituency is. He lost his life. He was a diabetic as well, but he'd had his electricity cut off, so he couldn't keep his insulin in the fridge because his fridge didn't work. So benefit sanctions are a brutal form of torture. Benefits, by definition, are the amount of money people need for the minimum level of existence. If you lose your benefits, if you're sanctioned, then you lose your right to life. You lose your right to food, heat, light and housing. So people are becoming homeless, they're being evicted. Now, people who are benefit sanctioned, they're sanctioned not for any real reason, not for turning up to an appointment. But everybody knows how chaotic the DWP is. People have been at their parents' funerals and been sanctioned, even though they informed the job centre that that's where they were going. And there's a whole long list. And there's over 1.5 million people now in the UK that have been sanctioned over the last 3 years. 1.5 million. An academic from Liverpool University did a study, and they said that benefit sanctions are more brutal than the criminal justice system. They're more brutal because the penalties are even greater. But you don't have any rights under the DWP system, not like you do in the criminal justice system. You're not charged, you're not put before a court and it's decided that you're guilty. You're decided by an unaccountable official in a job centre who decides that they're going to rather protect their job and look after themselves rather than stand up to the management, because they've been set targets by the government that are passed through the DWP to the civil servants who then carry it out. So these are life and death questions. This is cruel and degrading treatment. That's why the United Nations have launched an inquiry into the UK government. Now, this hasn't always been the case in the UK. The disability rights movement was founded in the UK. Over the past 40 and 50 years, successive governments, including Tory governments, have actually improved things for disabled people. We've seen progress up until the mid-2000s. when the Labour government introduced work capability assessments and outsourced it to Atos, that wonderful outsourcing company that used to run the work capability assessments. And disabled people have hounded Atos to the point where they gave up that contract. And the government have awarded it to another mercenary company, Maximus, an American outsourcing company. So they still continue. But the UN is investigating the UK government into human rights abuses. We're the only government in the world, the only country in the world that's currently being investigated for human rights abuses against disabled people. And the DWP themselves have 50 ongoing investigations into benefit-related deaths. Although anecdotally, from the research we've been doing, these fall into hundreds. But it's not just nationally. If you look at what's happening in Norfolk, the Mental Health Trust is failing. It's in special measures. And it's in special measures for two reasons. Partly because mental health has been singled out for bigger cuts than anywhere else in the health service. And partly because of dysfunctional management that again are outsourcing to private companies the services. And I want to give you an example, because there was a young man, and it was reported in the EDP. He's in his 20s. He had mental health issues. He had drug and alcohol issues. He was in the NNN. And because of the pressure on beds in the NHS and the cuts, they released him on a Saturday afternoon. They released him with nowhere to go. He was homeless. They released him on a Saturday afternoon when the drug and alcohol service was closed. And they found him dead behind a lap dancing club on Prince of Wales Road the following morning. That's what it's like under Coalition Britain. That's what the Tories and Lib Dems have reduced this country to. So DPAC and Equal Lives are fighting. We're fighting for our lives and the lives of poor and disabled people all over the country. The government's closed the Independent Living Fund. This is a fund that 18,000 severely disabled people with high support needs rely on for their life, for their independence. And this government's closed it. They've closed it, and they now hand those disabled people over to local authorities who are now responsible for their care. The problem is that local authorities have 50% funding today than they had in 2010 when this coalition government came to power. Their funding's been cut by half, and social care needs and demands are going up. So those people who use the ILF fund have no chance of getting the services they need to live independent lives. We've been fighting against the work capability assessment and the embarrassment of having a disability assessment centre in Norwich, in St Mary's House, that's not accessible to people with physical impairments. You couldn't make it up, could you? You have a multi-million-pound contract given out to a private company who are making profits doing disability assessments in a building that disabled people can't get into, where they're sending disabled people to Ipswich, Cambridge, Nottingham, Coventry, Mansfield for their assessments because they can't get into the building in Norwich. We're against benefit sanctions, and we had a demonstration outside the Job Centre a fortnight ago. And of course we're against the bedroom tax. So we're in a fight. And we're in a fight alongside trade unionists, and I'm very proud to be speaking here today, and I think it's a real achievement that this is the third year of the May Day celebration in Norwich, organised by the Trades Council, who oppose cuts and austerity. I also salute the People's Assembly that are organising against austerity and trying to organise a political movement to oppose it. And we stand full square with all those trade unionists and political fighters who are fighting against austerity. But I also condemn the Labour leaders and the trade union leaders who are boycotting today. Where's the Labour Party? Where's the banners? They are boycotting this because it's anti-austerity, because it's anti-cuts. And in the City Council and the County Council, they've imposed cuts. They're the ones that have voted through Tory policies. So I condemn those Labour leaders, and I condemn the trade union leaders in the TUC who have failed to lift a finger to fight this government. They're collaborators, and they're doing the Tories' dirty work for them. They're putting the interests of capital and the capitalist system and private profit and billionaires who are profiting and becoming richer and richer before the needs of the population. We can't live in a society where that's the case. If you can't look after poor and disabled people, then the system is broken, and we need to get rid of it and replace it with a system that puts people's needs first. As disabled people's organisations, we know whoever gets elected on Thursday is going to carry on where this government have left off. So we know we're in a fight, and it's not just going to be resolved now. It's not the short term. We're in it for the long haul, and we will carry on that fight. And I just want to end. We've produced disabled people's organisations, that's organisations of disabled people up and down the country, have produced a list of demands for the first 100 days of a new government. We've got 17 demands. I'll just read a few of them, because I think there's a clear programme that we're going to hold our politicians accountable for, and we're going to carry on fighting for these. We want them to reverse the decision to close the Independent Living Fund in June and plan to reopen it to not only the existing applicants and users, but new applicants. They must abolish the bedroom tax. They must scrap the work capability assessments and bring them back in-house into the civil service. And they must suspend assessments immediately. They must invite the UN inquiry team that's been trying to come in to investigate the human rights abuses. They must open the doors and let them in, and open the books and show them the evidence. They must fund mental health based on parity of esteem and address the short-term crisis with short-term funding to bring them up to a par with the rest of the health service. They must scrap benefit sanctions. They must restore funding to the NHS and to local authorities for children's and adult social care to back to 2010 levels and uprate it for inflation. And finally, they must reverse the cuts to access to work. That's the fund that allows disabled people to get into employment, to get jobs, to have a level playing field. So I hope next year on May Day I will be able to bring you some good news, but I don't think so. I think we're in a fight, and whatever happens on Thursday, I think we're going to be back here next year in even bigger trouble. So I'm sorry I can't be more optimistic, but I think we know we're in a fight, we know what that fight is, we know who the enemy is, and we have to step up, and we need everybody to join in. And the teachers and the firefighters have led the way as trade unionists, and we stand alongside them, alongside all other trade unionists that are fighting for people's rights. But we also need to give notice to our politicians and our trade union leaders and our managers and our highly paid CEOs of public sector companies that enough is enough. We can't go on. Thank you.